This is Community Heroes, and today I want to say we have another great topic to talk about on Table Talk. We're going to talk about driving, accessibility, and having a disability, and the difference whenever you have that. So today I have a good friend of mine, Earl Cutler. He's going to talk a little bit about how driving has changed things for him, maybe prior before, and how being able to get around now has benefited him. And so before we jump into conversation, I just want to get my viewpoint about driving. With driving, it's whenever you can't drive for anybody, it's always a burden. But if you have a limitation, sometimes to overcome that mobility issue is a little bit more difficult. I often tell my wife a lot of times if my car breaks down, something like that, it's almost like second nature. You call somebody, you can hop in their car and you're gone, but if you have a mobility issue and, for example, like myself, you're in a wheelchair, you can't just call someone because, your vehicle has accommodations. So you have to find someone that may accommodate your vehicle, or, you may just be stuck wherever you're at and you gotta call and make all these different phone calls to help that out. Also, another thing that a person may have to deal with for driving is very important that we can get around, but to get that independence, sometimes we have to pay a little more extra for those things, hand controls, modifications, and sometimes they can actually be more than the car itself in value to get done. And sometimes that makes it, you have to go out of town, sometimes out of state to get these things done, and it makes it difficult. But it's worth it for the new sense of independence that you get. And so I'm going to pause right now. And I don't know if anyone of you guys want to kind of chime in with a little bit I just talked about, some of the hurdles and stuff.
So for me, I haven't ever experienced driving because I had my permit, but then my permit ran out because I was too scared to drive, And that's basically what I've experienced so far.
Let me ask you this, Brandon. Like you said, because again, like you said, even though you don't have your license and you never driven like that before, but you can speak on some of the challenges that you face because you can't drive. Can you speak on that? Maybe trying to find a way to get to your destinations, trying to having to wait on other individuals, even though they say they take it, but just having to wait and be on their time.
Yeah, so for example, I'm a sports photographer and a sports reporter, so sometimes I have to ask my mom the day before or 2 days before just to tell her hey, there's a game at ACOG versus Eastern Wayne that I might want to cover. Is there any way you can take me after work? Or, for example, with going to school, I have to go. If I have a class at, let's say, 9 o'clock in the morning, I'll have to go to school by 7 in the morning, and then sit there for in the lounge from 7 to 8 to go to class at 9, and then say if I get out at, for example, 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'll have to wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon before either my mom or my dad gets off work to come home.
Okay. And I just want to add, if you haven't had a chance to follow us on our last Table Talk, Brandon, your disability is cerebral palsy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Michael, do you have any experience or any story you'd like to share?
Sure. I can share some experience with driving. I believe that some of my experience with one back in 2016 I contribute my learning disability and my and as well as my kind of a little bit what I've been diagnosed with was OCD, which is kind of I kind of obsess over minor things throughout the day. So what happened was I overcorrected when driving once. Usually I have my own driver's license, but and everything, and I usually very careful. But with the OCD part about myself, you know, I tend to kind of overthink things tremendously a lot. So I'm always in my head. So that kind of caused me to, you know, to mess up my car and get in a tremendous accident from that time because there was nobody acting, but I was kind of thinking that I was going to be late for school. So there was nobody in the way, but when I did pull out in front of a car, I overcorrected when I tried to get back out on the road. So a lot of times, you know, that was some of my limitations too as well, when I kind of overthink more than what's really actually happening at the time.
Yeah. I was gonna ask Earl because I know we've heard from Brandon, we heard from Michael, and with both of them, their disabilities are more genetic. But I know Earl, you were saying yours came from you know, gun violence, and so I'm assuming that you was able to probably experience driving as a quote unquote able-bodied person, and then later on still had to kind of adjust to being disabled driving.
Yes, I was driving before I was injured, and after my injury, I learned to drive with a broomstick before, because I couldn't afford the hand controls, and I bought a car and learned to drive with a broomstick and or a cane.
Yeah.
But it gave me a great deal of independence to learn to, you know, to drive. It's like it's much easier when I got the hand controls. Now I have a power chair. I can't just ask anybody to come, or, you know, I can't call a cab or have someone come and get me. I got a van now. I'm in the power chair now. When you met me, I was in a manual wheelchair.
Yeah. And not to cut you off, but you know, and you kind of reiterate on one point that I mentioned earlier, how you were just saying, you know, when you had to readjust to driving, and because of the price to get your vehicle modified with the specific hand gears, you know, you use your mind, and you were determined that you, like you said, you use the broomstick, you know, you use the cane, something that was lower in cost, and so you can still achieve that level of independence. And you know, I'm glad you shared that, because like I said, that's one of those things that we really want to convey in these videos, that, you know, there's hurdles like that. You have to sometimes get creative to be able to still accomplish what goal you want to achieve. And especially like you just said, with the different chair, the electric one, you know, that sometimes also is great. It's almost like a gift and a curse. It's great because you got easier accessibility, but then, like I said, it's bulkier. So now, like I said, you can't just really call any and everybody. I know with your pushchair, I'm assuming, you know, somebody could have been like, well, I'll get you, we'll just throw the chair in the trunk. But you can't just throw the power chair in the trunk. You know, like I said, that's why you had to get your van now, so you can be able to utilize that electric chair.
Right, exactly.
So I guess I share an experience with myself. I know I talked about it earlier, but I didn't give an experience, because everyone has given their experiences so far. myself, I've never driven. You know, I've talked about, you know, hangings and things like that. I've never driven. Uh, I would love to get maybe one of those Google cars, since with technology now, we're getting to the point now when you don't even have to drive, the car will drive itself. But what I've learned from early on when I had to depend on other people to take me around in public transportation, it was tough because you had to, you know, you had to pay extra money a lot of times more than usual. You know, I thank God for public transportation, but you know, you're paying $5 to go down the street, and if you had a car, you can put $2 in gas and you go where you need to, you know, things like that. But whenever I met my wife and I was able to get around, we got a van and she was the driver, but it opened up a lot of new doors and allowed me to go out of state, and allowed me to go to different amusement parks, and allowed me to go on cruises, and you know, it allowed me to achieve a level of independence that I could achieve. But also at the same time, it allowed me to see there's a lot of places around that still aren't prepared for individuals who want to be able to enjoy things that, you know, really requires the chair to be involved, whether it be amusement park rides, boat rides, even some transportation things. I went to the Biltmore, and there was one trolley ride they had there. I couldn't get on, but they had another one that came around. I had to wait. You know, they only had like one ride that I could use, but you know, just small things like that. You know, that where it show that the message of awareness is to be pushed more. So Brandon, I know you said that you haven't driven, but let me ask you this question: do you see yourself trying to maybe obtain your license later on again, or trying for it again?
Yes, of course. I plan to try eventually, but right now with my schedule and me going to school full time and trying to also go to games, it's a little hard to like try to focus on driving because for one, I have patience, but then like for example, my mom, whenever I drove with her and I was in this incident where like for example, I was getting I guess too close to the yellow line, and instead of like for example, she's saying Brandon, scoot over a little bit, she was like she yelled at me, you know, to scoot over, you know. So then that's where I got like so scared, you know, of driving, and I was like, well, if you're gonna yell at me, because I'm not good under yelling pressure, you know. So I was like, I'm just gonna not drive for now. And then I've always tried to get back since then, but it's been hard due to like school and me working like with my businesses, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned a great point because Tyrone, before he said independence. Well, yeah, I can definitely relate to that point that you just made, Brandon. Especially with your parent, if you're around your parent, and I still, even with the level of independence I have, they still are not that very confident about me being in long trips alone yet. So I still haven't, you know, sort of gotten away from people's supervision, so to speak. And when I did get my driver's license, it was almost like I didn't entirely learn how to drive until I got the chance to actually get a real driver's license and actually experience for myself, because mostly just the fact that under somebody's supervision, unless you had somebody that had what you were saying, patience, because my mom, she wasn't a good teacher like at all, so I never learned with her. and I was like a lot worse than yours. She didn't have the patience to let me make mistakes or anything like that, and she caused me to get nervous and things like that. So it wasn't until I got my driver's license, I know for a fact, it wasn't until I actually got my driver's license and I started driving for myself that I actually started really getting the awareness. Okay, watch the road, watch for the stop sign, watch for the yield sign, things like that.
So let me ask you guys this question. In the high school setting, you know, when usually driver ed is offered, how many of you actually had someone come up to you and ask you, are you going to sign up for driver's ed?
I never took driver's ed.
I mean, I took driver's ed, but I had to take it at least twice. Like, I had to take the written part, like the test part, twice, because the first time I failed it because I was only like a few questions off, and then the second time I passed it with one of my friends, and then that's when I got my permit. And then I was gonna take. The thing is, I was gonna do my license when my permit was still, but then I didn't have much experience driving because my mom, you know, was kind of yelling at me, you know. Plus, I wasn't very comfortable with driving. So, like, for example, when I turned 18, my permit ran out, you know, and then I wasn't to renew it, but then I didn't feel comfortable driving. So it's like, well, let me, like, if I don't feel comfortable driving, I'm not going to, like, get behind a wheel just to get my license, you know, and then not use my license, even if I still don't feel comfortable, you know. So I just let it run out. And then, of course, now I'm trying to eventually get back to trying to get my actual driver's license. But with time, like with everything that I've done so far, I haven't had time enough to do it.
What about you, Michael?
Well, my experience is different. I got into the driver's ed course right before high school. It was right during the summer. I took driver's ed class right during the summer, and then shortly after that, I went right into the driver's portion. I didn't have, like Brandon, I didn't have any experience with the driving too well. I barely got that, but he gave me a few points for being very courteous while on the road. I was a good listener. I wasn't any problem. I tried to listen, but I wasn't a very good driver. My mom, you know, she was helpful on a few points, but she was very impatient. So I barely got and then it was a long time before I ever got it was almost near the midpoint of the 11th grade before I actually decided to get the courage to take I think it was like 3 times before I actually passed the written exam for my driver's permit. So it took me a while to get a permit.
So I have another question, and I'm just asking this question. So I never did driver's ed, and I haven't never driven, so you guys are gonna have to help me with this question. With the vehicles that are used in most high schools when they take students out to drive, to your best recollection, are those vehicles modified in any kind of way? Like they say someone's paraplegic. Do they have the hand control? Do they got an option? Do they got a car on? At any one of the high schools that you know, and say, if you want to drive but you're unable to use your limbs, we have a car that you can use.
Good question.
Well,
I personally think the answer is no. That's what I think, but I'm not.
For me, whenever I did my driving tests, like at ACOG, they were like only had like two wheels, you know. Of course, there was a main wheel, you know, in the driving section, and then in the passenger section, they had one just in case if, like, for example, for Michael, like if you turn too much to the right, you know, he would slowly, you know, use that wheel to move you back towards the left, you know. But for me, it was just a regular like driving seat, two driving seats, and of course the back was just like a regular car, like in a back seat. So for me, there wasn't no like special car to have, for example, a wheelchair.
And the reason I asked is because I'm building on something here. That's why I asked that one question. If the public school system is funded by federal funds, and the ADA and all that stuff is protected under those type of laws, could someone arguably say that the agenda could be pushed that a car should be on campus if someone requested to take the driver's ed course, but they couldn't use their limb?
Yes, it should.
Yeah.
It should. But I can't help you with that question because I haven't been to school in 30 years and I never took driver's ed.
Yeah. And, you know, and I put it out there. I know, see, this is going to be posted. So, you know, these are some things that we have to be, every state should be aware, you know, when we come to federal dollars, that why hasn't this even been on the radar, that nobody has even questioned something like that, you know? Especially with, we're in 2020 with so much technology, the special population is emerging more and more in the workplace, driving and everything. So, you know, these things should be in place. And that was how I wanted to put that question out there, just to see what response we would get. But I can't think of anything else. I think we covered a lot of good topics. We talked a good amount about just the difference in driving whenever you have a limitation. Before I kind of wrap this up, did y'all want to say anything or anything special?
To clarify, when you say when you're saying special contraption for the car, are you talking about something for the steering wheel or a special seat?
Well,
He's talking about hand controls.
Yeah, hand controls, yeah. Just making it accessible, the bare minimum accessibility for someone who has, like I said, who's paraplegic, they can't use their bottom limbs, to be able to use at least the hand controls to be able to drive if they can get in the car. You know, like I said, I think that shouldn't be there. And also, I mean, there's so much I would want to argue. I remember when I was going to high school, I mentioned this before in one of my other videos. The high school I went to did not have a bus with a ramp on it. I had to use the elementary school bus, which had a ramp on it.
Really?
And here we go again. Like I said, when we start, now that I'm older and I'm understanding a little bit about money and federal dollars, you know, I could have really pushed the envelope and really been like, why isn't this, you know, here, you know, because I'm a student in the school just like everybody else, and I should have equal access.
Right.
But you know, but hopefully that's why Community Heroes is here, because we want to pull the cover off and expose some of these issues that need to be addressed. But yeah, Michael, I don't know if I clarified what you just asked about. That's what we meant. Why I meant when I asked that question. You know, what I'm saying in the public school system, if they're going to get public dollars, you know, that should be there. At least one car. You don't have to buy a whole fleet, but one car should be accessible.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't remember. I didn't pay attention to it, so I don't really think I even can recall that in school about the importance about trying to ensure the safety of people that are handicapped or can't, you know, get up the steps, or you know what they try to do with tax dollars to try to make sure the safety of handicap. As a matter of fact, you know, I don't even think I remember there was anything that they did for like doors and things like that. They didn't even have that when I was growing up, I believe. That many them automatic doors when I was going to school like that.
Well, you know, just at least providing them a means to learn how to drive is one step towards independence. You know, and
Indeed.
if you're in a traditional classroom setting, but you have a special need, the school agenda is to help you graduate, but also to get you ready to integrate into society and being a tax-paying citizen. You know, and one of the first steps is that being able to get around to apply for a job.
Right.
So, but yeah, but that's what that was, Michael. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of put the final touches on the video. You know, again, if anybody else want to say anything before I just kind of wrap it up? Okay. Again, look, I appreciate everyone coming in today. Like I said, I think this was a great topic. We raised some great issues. Earl, man, I appreciate you coming in, man, and just hanging out with us.
Anytime, brother.
Yeah, and anytime you want to come back, just email me. Let me know you want to, you know, join in on the topic. You know, we would love to have you back.
Okay.
And my last closing thoughts, just for the viewers who are viewing right now, call to action. Share this video, like it, comment, share the ideas in the comments that we share with other people.